Right, let me continue with the lecture. Okay, I think previous class we discussed on the example of the structure of government, the government services. I think that is very important for you to have that basic understanding. And in the new services, I think I did discuss on the generally government services involve these three major categories: coordination, implementation, and enforcement. Okay, and then why new services is being developed, okay, based on market failure, and then with the, and also you can see this, structure of government agencies, okay, why they are being developed. There are traditional services like education, like healthcare, okay, and defense, and there are also others. From time to time, recently the government launching new, in the case of Malaysia, so recently I think they launched a new company, isn't it? A special vehicle company to manage the, what do you call it? IR, the 5G, okay, the 5G infrastructure. Okay, so you can see that thing. But it's also interesting the talent that they attract. I think they basically hiring from, I think, from Astros. So a combination of a government servant, okay, the chairman is basically the chief secretary of the ministry, and then the CEO is basically professional, taken or hired from the industry, key leaders in the industry. Okay, so that's how government works to provide the services. Right. So I think we discussed this as well, right? This. So if you look at this in the case of public transport, public transportations, okay, one of the key. I mean, transportation is very important facilities or services in the country, right? If you look at that, bus services, road quality, road accidents. So multiple agencies are working on it. Okay, public uh, road department. Okay, there are licensing issue, road tax, road accident, road quality, for instance. So basically under public work department. Okay, and the police also involved in enforcing. Uh, uh, okay, safe driving, or safety in the road. So but the extent of enforcement is limited, okay, to ensure safety in the road. And so that cannot be only what happened on the road itself, okay. So it will start from education, from training. So there's so many dimensions. Okay, so that's why enforcement is very limited in terms of providing the good, the function of the government, but the good services by the government. Okay, so that's the issue. Okay, including crime prevention. So multiple agencies addressing the same problem. Take note of that because I think why I highlight this. We are talking about efficiency of the government, effectiveness of the government agencies, or government as a whole and government agency more on micro level. So get used to all this discussion. Of course, now maybe some of you are quite familiar with public sector issues. Or some of you possibly is still new. Okay, so that's why you need to get yourself familiar. Then you can. It's easy to follow counting topics within the discussion. Okay, now we move on to functions of state in Islam. Okay, so I think nowadays there is issues of Islamic State, but that's what happened. But I mean, based on Quran and Sunnah, it's also Sharia. Okay, so what are the functions of state in Islam? So you can see that at the left there to provide uh, functions provided or specified by Sharia, including defense, law, and order. Okay, functions derived from Sharia on the basis of ijtihad for the present situation, including protection, the environment, dealing with social problems. Okay, so that's based on ijtihad. You can see here, of course, at the needs of the people generally. And functions assigned to the state at any time, any place by the people through the process of shura, consultation. Okay, so but at the government level nowadays, the structure is through the parliament. At the federal government level, okay, it depends on your country. Okay, some country they have 2 tier. In the case of Malaysia, we have 3 tiers government, central government, and then state government as well as local government. Okay, but in other countries you have federal government as well as provincial government. So it depends. So, but in any case, the body, the legislative body, okay, in the case of federal government, in the case of Malaysia, it's a federal government, it's parliament. And then at the state level, that is a state legislative council. And then with local government is the local council. Okay, so they will decide on the allocation of the budgets, the law, the regulations, the priorities of the government. Okay, need to be mainly tabled through the parliament. Okay, as the main source of authorization, authority. Okay. That's why I think the head of definitely at the head of the parliament or the head of the state, basically in the case of Malaysia, is who's the head of the state in the case of Malaysia? Class.
Sultan.
Sultan of the state. In the case of federal government, Malaysia, who's the head of the state?
Prime Minister.
One more.
YDPA.
Menteri Besar.
Who's the head of the state in the case of Malaysian government?
Agong.
YDPA.
Yes, Agong, huh? So the king is the head of the state. Prime Minister is the head of executive. Okay, but later on we discuss. Get yourself have the right idea. Right. For this class also, I introduced public sector reforms. Okay. So from time to time, there are a series of reforms. I think the discussion in the class is basically all the topics, the results of public sector reforms. So that happened. I think this is not only in Malaysia, it's applicable to other countries as well. Okay, because public sector reforms is an international phenomena. Okay, they happen in different countries. It's just that the level of achievement, the level of improvement is diverse. Okay, but the reform, the improvement is taking place as we speak. Okay, deliberate changes to the structures and process of public sector organizations, the objective of getting them to run better. Structural change may include merging or splitting public sector organizations. Okay, while process change may include designing systems, setting quality standard, focusing on capacity building. Okay, so briefly, okay, the definition of public sector reforms. Right, factors leading to public sector reforms, increasing expectation of the standard of public services, okay, by the public, by the citizens, okay, because they have different experience in different countries, okay, then the expectations also increase. Globalization, okay, so economically as well as socially, right? People are traveling across the globe, okay, for economics and for various reasons. And nowadays, not only individuals, but companies, okay, opening up. I think different countries basically compete to make sure that business are coming. Okay, economic crisis, right? Economic crisis can also trigger reforms, and because to help. I think now, yeah, as we speak, right, but no major, because in the case of Malaysian, it's quite been already streamlined. New management ideas and party political ideas, okay, can trigger public sector reforms, and as well as ICT, yeah, it's an enabler, okay, for a better public services, okay, through communication, then they can identify clearly what are the target groups. So with that, they can enhance the service to be provided by them, okay, by the government agencies. Right. So one trend in the public sector reform, they call it new public management, right? It's a name because it shares, I think there is principle behind it. So you can see that private sector management style being introduced to public sector organizations, okay, including empowerment of line management, focus from process accountability to accountability for results. Okay, at this point, you just take first the meaning of it. Okay, but I think over the 6 weeks, okay, you can understand this better. Okay, what when we discuss on budget, when we discuss about performance measurement, so directly or indirectly, we'll focus on accountability. So with the new public management, okay, basically they provide a platform so that the government as well as the civil servants, the treasuries, okay, moving, okay, the accountability from process accountability to accountability for results. I think nowadays maybe either you notice or you're aware or you're not aware that sometimes even any government agencies or prime minister or even the leaders in the government agencies or university, we talk about impact, we talk about outcome. So this word, this narrative, basically the results of what is being introduced by this reform. It become language. It become a spoken language. Even nowadays we talk about at the local level, okay, at the surau, at the JKK level, at the public, at the community level. People talk about KPIs. People talk about impact, outcome. It become a common narrative, a common language. But actually, it's originated from a public sector reform that happened in 1980s. Okay, the separation of business and non-business accounting, okay, involve outsourcing. So that's why I think procurement topics become very, very important, right? And together with that, okay, so that cost services is basically directly under government. And then emphasis on improved governance, because to support from process accountability to accountability for results, there also mechanism need to be in place. Okay, new public management, I think try to get yourself familiar with it. And with that, there is impact on accounting. So because the advocates of these public sector reforms mentioned clearly that even among the academics, that accounting is the backbone of these public sector reforms. Because if you look at the first point there, emphasis on efficiency and result-based accountability. Okay, very simple. Okay, if you want to have efficiency, you want to know all the resources need to be accounted. Simple as that. Okay, so that requires a good accounting system that can account for full cost of services. Okay, I think at this point even you can quickly can understand. Okay, I think costing is what about costing of services, isn't it? So full cost information. And if you talk about full cost, yeah, so I think you learn all these techniques in costing, in the accrual accounting. So that's why all these discussion come into become relevant for our discussion. Okay, that's require a shift the whole accounting system, accounting, shift to accrual basis of accounting, reporting, shift to accrual basis of reporting, budgeting to a performance-based resources allocation system. Okay, so try to appreciate it, get yourself familiar with all these terms and jargons. Okay, it's not so difficult, but just that all this jargon put into context into public sector accounting. Right now, we move on to reforms in Malaysian government. Okay, the result of globalization, economic development. Okay, so that's why with the economic development, because right from the beginning, particularly from 1969, when there is a racial riot, then in 1969 and 70, so government at that time make a major revamp so that the economic progress, development must be an agenda for the country. I mean, even right from the beginning. then because it's one of the key areas to make this country stable. Okay. Okay, that led to series of reforms. The political legitimacy, definitely, okay, for the political parties remain as the in power. The impact of internationalization, as mentioned, okay, the fact that our reforms are basically have so close resemblance to new public management as part of international reform trend. And the role of international organizations, okay, we are members of our, our public sector are members of, because the fact that we are also from Commonwealth countries, I think across Commonwealth countries, they share information, share knowledge. Then we are part of United Nations, and then also the region, okay, these regional areas, okay, all these platforms provide, and the fact that also we have close relationship with the major countries, major economies, okay, the US, Europe, as well as East Asia. Okay, all these become source of platforms for us to be able, for the public service, to be able to improve or to make themselves at least comparable to their counterparties or counterparts in these different regions. Okay, so you can see major reform Malaysian government right from early 70s. Okay, with the budgeting system and then the institution, the establishment of Intan, the National Training Institute. Okay, in the 1980s there is privatization, Malaysian Incorporated. Then in 1990s, more on a quality-based system. Okay, and then we come to 20s. So you can see, including the private finance initiative. And currently, we are talking about outcome-based budgeting, accrual accounting. Basically, enforcement, continuation from the previous reforms. Okay, right. That's for the lecture one. Any question? Any question, class? Okay. Right. I just yeah, it's a second. Yeah, governance of Malaysian government. Okay. Three branch of government. Okay, legislative, executive, and judiciary. Right, so legislative is the parliament, executive is the cabinet ministers, as well as all government machineries under executive. Okay, so that's why executive, very important. I mean, all arms of the government are very important. Get yourself familiar with this, at least if you don't, memorize what it means, but at least when you see the word legislative, you can quickly remember what the word legislative. You can quickly remember what in your mind. Legislative.
Law.
Law, yes, but they're making the law. They're making the make the law of the country. So basically, the parliament, isn't it? So the House of Commons, the House of Representatives, and the House of Senates. Okay, the Parliament. So that legislative. So I want you, like, if you see the word legislative, you can quickly remember Parliament building, right? Either in Malaysia or in your own country, right? Legislative. They make law, and not only law. So this law is including providing the funding for the executive. So executive, basically they execute all the planning, the policy of the government, okay, based on the current the political priorities of the current government, right? And all the government agencies focusing on that. Then you can see all the cabinet ministers, so under executive. And then under judiciary, the court of law. Okay, so very important for you to understand this, because it's part of check and balance. If the word check and balance means what? Okay, means check and balance means what? In the case of government, between executive, the ministers, and the parliament. Anyone want to say something?
Audit.
Yes, Parliament use audit report, okay, to scrutinize executive. One more.
accountability?
Okay, yes. So the ministries, they are all accountable to the parliament. Okay, the 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 elected officials. Okay, the ministries. No, not ministry. The ministers to the parliament, and then the appointed civil servants. Because they are all civil servants. There are two types of civil servants: elected civil servants and appointed civil servants. So the members of parliament who become holding the portfolio, okay, in the ministries, okay, they are elected civil servants in the executive. Other than that, they are all civil servants, appointed civil servants. They are not elected. So significant majority, almost 1.5 million, most of them are elected, appointed civil servants. Right. So accountable. Okay. So in terms of formal structure of accountability, so the executive also have to be accountable to the parliament. Okay. Right. Check and balance. I understand that because that basically account. This class is basically discussing is to support those infrastructure, okay, and to make it effective and works, okay. So what is the latest development, what's happening, okay, so you can pretty much appreciate what's happening, because in the future also you will directly get involved either in the government, okay, or maybe as advisor to the ministers, okay. I think our students hold that position either in the current government, in the previous government, even I mean we have fresh graduates. I think two of them, they are being seconded, appointed as the special advisor to the minister. Okay, so it can happen. So I think this kind of knowledge definitely will be helpful, because particularly if you are a accounting student, you can equip them. Okay, because sometimes the elected officials, they are new to all these accountability issues. Okay, how to because their focus will be how to serve their constituents. At the same time, okay, the resources that they are entrusted to them, okay, they have to be accountable with the standards that is prescribed by what is needed by the country. Okay, so you can help in that sense. Okay, so the governance structure as mentioned, the head of the state is the Yang Tuan Agong, okay, as a representative of Conference of Rulers. Right, legislative is the parliament, cabinet, executive, and the courts. On top of that, we also have commissions and auditor general. So you can see in the structure, basically auditor general, they are not accountable to the prime minister, okay, or they are also not accountable directly to the parliament, okay, but they can be called by the parliament, to explain. Even they can be called by the courts, okay, to explain, to become to provide evidence and also witness. I think in the case of 1MDB, right? The court case now, so the Auditor General is called to become one of the witness. On top of that, their report will be useful, will be reported to the Parliament, but they are directly accountable to the Agong. Similarly, with the commissions, there are so many commissions. Commission for education, commissions for police, commissions for anti-corruption is also under commissions. So because they are directly accountable to Agong, they are above. They are not subservient to executive or even legislative. Okay, because their appointment is basically by Agong, but of course with the recommendation by the obviously by the Prime Minister. Okay, get this understanding because I think in accounting, we also like, we have this concept of segregation of duties, separation of powers, and segregation of duties. So you have that understanding in terms of internal control, isn't it? And how accounting operation must work, okay, to make sure that information is reliable. So try to apply all those understanding, how the structure, the governance within these government organizations and government as a whole. Okay, make sense? Right, you can read this. Okay, relevant article in the Constitution. Okay, and then these are two houses. Okay, I think you can read this because why it's important. Then you should be able to understand. Because one of the major topic in this class is budgeting. Okay, okay. Of course, our focus will be on budgeting techniques. But then at the same time, you need to understand how that the budget flow and this allocation at the end become effective and will be received by various agencies to make sure that your location is can be used by the civil servant. The process in the parliament is, I think, it's a basic knowledge that you need to understand. I think nowadays it's good in the sense that the parliament setting sessions been shared in the YouTube live or maybe recorded, okay, and also shared in the main media. So I think from time to time try to get yourself also familiar with all this process will be useful for you to understand how the government channel the funding. At the end, you talk about when they approved recently 300 billion, whatever. So how to channel those from to various agencies and to various programs. I think if you just listen to my lecture and read the textbooks, I think it's very hard to imagine the process and to make it interesting or something that you can understand. So I think through multiple platforms, that you can get yourself exposed, that make your learning better. All right, I think this is a current one, the executive power led by the Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, all right? So with the cabinet ministers, right, with various ministries, judiciary power, okay, they're all separate. Right, and then now we move to administrative structure of government, Malaysian government. So this administrative structure is mainly under which branch of government? Legislative, executive, or judiciary? Class?
Executive.
Under which? Yes, under executive. Right. At federal level, we have ministries, department, and statutory bodies. Okay, these I think of course the parent ministries. It's like parent company, isn't it? You learn company, group company. Okay, it's like group company also. Ministry, there's parent ministries, and then there are subsidiaries. But of course, in government, you don't call subsidiaries. You call agencies or you call departments and statutory bodies. Okay. Departments is a different structure. Statutory bodies also a different structure, different status. Okay, later on we'll discuss this further. At the state level, there are also departments and statutory agencies. And local, okay, they have city hall itself, a local council, a municipal council, and district councils. Okay, by itself is an agency by itself. Okay, on top of that, I think they also have companies. They can have companies. Okay, even at state level, they can have government-linked companies. So, but I don't put them because in the case of federal government, companies generally been either been incorporated directly under the Ministry of Finance, or they have been parked or been assigned to statutory bodies. Okay, including at the state level. There are hundreds of them. So that all become the subject for audit. So company law. So that's why public sector is one major client for public auditors. So if you aim to be a public auditor in the future, so you can become one of the panel for auditors, panel auditors for the government. Okay, now we look at relationship between federal and state government. I think that's also important for you to be able to appreciate because most of the projects and programs are being implemented at the state level. Okay, on top of that, there are also relationships between federal and the state government in terms of particularly you look at financial matters. I think that's quite interesting. Right. Of course, each state they have their own legislative. But what is important in our discussion is this non-schedule. They call it federal, state, and concurrent list. Okay. I think these provide jurisdictions or scope of services that federal government can provide, state government can provide, and then some of the areas that state government cannot go beyond their authority. Yeah? I think if you learn company law, we talk about ultra virus, isn't it? We do something that beyond your authority. So similarly, in the case of state and federal, so that's why it's very important when they make decisions within their scope of limit authority jurisdiction. So we can look quickly federal list, external affairs, okay, security. So that's why we talk about police all under federal government. Administration of justice, finance, okay, mainly financial matters is in the hands of federal government. Trade and commerce, shipping and fisheries, communication, transportation, education, okay. So generally we have a national education providing the broad policy, education policy, healthcare. Okay, I think the three major basically defense, internal security, okay, finance, transportation, communication, education, and healthcare. These are major services by the government, federal government. Okay, these are their main jurisdictions. Trade and commerce, I think, very major. Let us look at state list, forestry. Okay, that's why forest is the state matters. Land, okay. Okay, land matters, okay, is very huge issue. Land matter, that's why federal government, if they want to do is any project that involve interstate projects, then they have to get approval or cooperation from the state. Otherwise, if the state basically disagree or decline to cooperate, then the project cannot continue. Okay, I think last time there was an issue about what I think water piping, okay, between Pahang and Selangor. There was an issue, and then recently, okay, even in terms of law, criminal law, I think this was an issue last time. Recently, okay, there was a law basically. The federal judge nullify the state law because basically the state have no jurisdiction to issue the same law, because this basically the scope of law is also provided at the federal level. Okay, on top of that, religious matters, okay, Islamic affairs and revenue, all under basically not under state but directly under Sultan. Islamic affairs and revenue, I think there is a bit variation, but mainly it is directly under Sultan, okay, not even under the state assembly. And state works and water. Water is also under water management. Water one is the water itself, okay, to provide water to the state, the community or the population. Another is water asset. Okay, but interestingly, in Malaysia, the water asset, the pipe, there is a water pipe crossing from north to south peninsula, is basically the federal government asset. Okay, but the water matters, administration and management is under the state. Okay, so you can see how important it is. And there are also concurrent lists, scholarship. Okay, scholarship for education. It is interesting because scholarship is provided in the constitution to the Bumi Putra. So that's why every year in the allocation, in the budget allocation, there must be a scholarship, okay, and scholarship for Bumi Putra to continue to pursue their studies. Okay, it's provided under the constitution. And social welfare, protection of wild animal, town and country planning, drainage and irrigation, these are concurrent. So it means that federal and state, okay, they can involve in this matter. Okay, financial relationships. Okay, of course, if you look at this between state and federal revenue, there are revenue that accrue by the federal government. There are also specific revenue accrued by the state government, particularly if you look at the previous. If you look at state matter, for instance, state lease, so all these sometimes generate income. Let's say land. Land, you have land tax, okay, every year. So that is collected by the state government, not by the federal government. And the use of forests to have permit to develop the forest, okay, for what do you call for forests? Okay, class in the afternoon. You know, or the permit, you know, to cut all the trees. What do you call it in English? Can't remember now.
Locking.
What it?
Locking.
Logging. Logging. Okay. Right, and of course these are generate income, right? So definitely state government can collect them. Expenditures and commitment, both federal and state government are required to cover the expenditures. The federal may provide financial assistance to the state. Not only that, there are also provision by the constitutions, okay, that certain income need to be paid from federal to the state government. Borrowing, state may borrow from the federal government to elevate budget deficits. Okay. Right. So these are revenues as provided in the Constitution. All revenues and money raised or received by the federation. So federation here means mission government, federal government shall be paid into federal consolidated fund. Okay. So there is a specific fund, and of course we need accounting for it to account for the federal money. Yeah? And the state applied to the state consolidated fund, but excluding zakat, fitrah, baitul mal, or similar Islamic religious revenue, because these are directly under the Majlis Agama, the Majlis, the religious council. So that's why I said because these are they are not under the state assembly. Okay, they are directly under Sultan. So very special. Okay, and state government is entitled to receive financial assistance in the funds. Okay, the word grants also, get yourself familiar, because these words will be used in this class many times. Okay, in many forms. Okay, receive grants. Okay, either provided by the constitutions, provided by the law, and from time to time provided by the government through part of their budgeting process. Okay, expenditures and financial commitments, federal and state government to cover their expenditures. However, if the state government are unable to cover the expenditures, for instance, the development, federal government will finance some of these expenditures on a reimbursable basis. Okay, so it means that the state government take loans from the federal government. Okay, it's interesting because sometimes there is an arrangement where the state government is basically take loans from the federal government. Okay, and sometimes okay, you have to see what is behind it. Because for instance, there are let's say in the case of petroleum, because petroleum revenue all accrued to a federal government. Okay, to federal government because petroleum is either whatever they are in Malaysia, they are owned by the federal government. Okay, so all revenues basically accrued to federal government. But interesting part is there are states in Malaysia where all this oil are being extracted. So by right, they should have more shares in that. But of course, this one is subject. I mean, it's been debated and been discussed in detail because at this point, the profit margin, not that much. But you can see that those states are basically they can take loans from the federal government. But you know, if you need to understand it a bit more. In any case, if you take loans, definitely they have to pay back the loans. That's why it's very different if you take loans as opposed to grants. If you receive grants, it's basically you just receive money from your parents. Do you take loans from your parents or you receive grants from your parents?
Allowance.
Allowance. So yeah, that's another good word, allowance. So of course, For employees, individuals, you receive allowance, but for the state and government agency, they receive grants. Okay, very rare you take loans. But here they take loans. But if you take loans, you have to pay. All the expenditures, both federal and state, charged to the consolidated fund requires approval from the parliament. Okay, so take note of this because these have become the basis of all our discussion. Okay, the fund is a consolidated fund. It's like a bank account for you. But it's not a bank account. It's a is a fund that has been established by the constitution. Okay, so need to be managed. Okay, this fund, of course, the treasury, okay, the government as a whole managing it, Ministry of Finance, the accounting part, of course, being managed by the councils general. But we'll discuss that a bit more. Basically, in terms of financial reporting, so accounting for consolidated fund is basically the basis of our all discussion. Okay, borrowing, the federal shall not borrow except authorized by the federal law. And then state also can borrow with the approval less than 5 years. Purpose of government borrowing, I think that is more important for you to remember. Why government borrow? Because to cover budget deficit, okay, generally. And also to cover, to support development and operating expenditures. But generally in Malaysia, borrowing is basically to support the development projects, development expenditures. But that is quite a common characteristics of developing countries. Normally, the government, they budget for deficit. Okay, budget for deficits. Okay, rarely, of course, the opposite of budget deficit is budget surplus, right? And of course, I mean, ideally, it's a balanced budget. But then, but for developing countries generally, because government, you must remember, government spending is part of economic expenditures. There are 3 or 4 major economic expenditures, isn't it? From the private, but government expenditure is one of main expenditures to stimulate economic growth. Okay, so that's why sometimes they need to budget for bad deficit. But as long as it's still within the manageable, okay, so I think the key is under manageable, it's manageable, that the government still can pay all the borrowings. Okay, any questions? I think I have to finish this. I cannot. All right, should be less than 1 hour, but they have to cover. Right, the instruments of the borrowings. So you can look at this. There is a domestic, the relevant laws. Okay, treasury bill, loans, ordinance. You can see that loans are basically very old law as opposed to treasury bill. Okay, the Malaysian government certificates, and then they can also take loans, external loans. Okay, including the loans from Islamic Development Bank. Then at the bottom there, the instruments. Okay, for domestic, Malaysian government securities, treasury bill, investment certificates. Okay, loan for housing loan fund. Okay, there's a housing loan fund is basically for housing loan for civil servants. Okay, then I think that's to finance that mainly, taking from the commercial banks. Okay, but the treasury bills, the government securities. Okay, these are basically dominated, basically bonds, bonds and sukuk. Okay, so if you look at the bottom there, bond issues, it's also possible they take this from IMF. But in the case of Malaysia, I think it's almost none that we receive money from IMF. Because IMF normally, if they provide funding to any country, I think because of they control the fiscal policy as well as the economic policy, then I think like in the case of Malaysian government, a bit reluctant to receive money from them. Right. Right. I think the main instrument for the borrowing is this Malaysian government securities, managed by who manage the Malaysian government securities? Assigned to anyone? To the central bank, to the Bank Negara. Okay, so can you check them? Right, grants are financial assistance from the federal government and it's not repayable by the state government. Right, so I think you can read this. There are various types of grants. Okay, financial assistance from the federal government is not repayable. Rational state has insufficient income to fund the activities as part of redistribution of wealth across state to ensure equitable quality of life and standard of living. Okay, basically in terms of housing, okay, in terms of road infrastructure, water quality, okay, that's the main one. Okay, one type of grant from federal to state, they call it revenue growth grant. Okay, the basis of the grant, when the federal government, there has been an economic growth by more than 10%, then they provide this allocation, but with a specific use. So the use for this revenue growth grant, water supply, public housing, industrial estate development, other development project approved by National Finance Council. So this revenue grant is not unrestricted. Is a restricted funding. Right. I think in this class also get yourself familiar with funding. There is restricted fund, there is unrestricted funds. Okay. You also need to get used to that. That's why I think one of the topic is fund accounting. Okay. To help for your understanding. Okay, so right, there are grants provided by by the constitutions, by the Act of the Parliament, as well as National Finance Council, headed by the Prime Minister. Okay, capitation grant, state road grant, and state reserve grant. In case of national finance, a grant for infrastructure. Okay, and Acts of Parliament, including iron ore export duty grant. Okay, now we move on to the financial management framework. Okay, government accounting machinery, the agencies, the treasury, okay, under Ministry of Finance, right? And then under Ministry of Finance also, Accountants General Department. Accountants General Department. Okay, the personnel, controlling officers and accounting officers. Personnel mean the people, they are the one who basically manage the government funding, government funds. Okay, system and procedures, federal constitution. Okay, I think one of them, as we've seen just now, so there must be mandate and source of mandate for them to draw the fund from consolidated fund, to use the money. So all these, and then to account for it. So under federal constitution supported also with the Financial Procedures Act, together with Audit Act, Treasury Instruction. Treasury Instruction is from time to time. There is Treasury Order, Treasury Circulars, okay, from the Treasury, from the Ministry of Finance, to all government agencies, and including government as well as state level, local government. Okay, to provide a framework and also regulations, basically, what do and don'ts that to use the public fund. Okay, and then with the accounting, so this MPSAs, I think, of course, by right, they should issue now accrual accounting. Okay, beside MPSAs, also the accounting standard under cash environment by the Accountants General Department. Right, from here, there is personnel. You must remember this guy. Okay, controlling of okay, the functions of the Treasury to formulate and implement fiscal and monetary policy. Okay, of course, fiscal mostly directly by the government itself. Okay, the Treasury, Ministry of Finance, and then working closely with the government agencies and the Parliament, as well as monetary policy is basically, I think, managed or developed by the central bank. Okay, I think generally the monetary policy is in the hand of central bank, but since in Malaysia, central bank is under the Ministry of Finance. Okay, they're not independent. Unlike in the US, okay, generally central bank or the Federal Reserve is basically independent from the state. But in the case of Malaysia, they are under the Ministry of Finance. Okay, to formulate financial management and accounting process, procedures and standards. Okay, to manage acquisition and disbursement of federal government loan and the rest. So I think also you need to know as a general knowledge, they also have Ministry of MOF incorporated companies. So all these JLCs generally the shares held by Ministry of MOF incorporated. Okay, to monitor financial management of ministries, government departments, three bodies. Okay, to manage government procurements, okay, government housing loans. Okay, you can get all this information from this Treasury website. So that's the building, very nice building in where is the building situated? Class?
Putrajaya.
Yeah, you should go there now, visit. Maybe you can work. Nice building, okay. Right, so these are, sorry? Anyone? Right, these are accountant general. Yeah, we have so many of our alumni working in this place. So many. I think hopefully soon in the future, the next accountant general will be our alumni. Yeah, definitely. These are one of the place that you can consider for your employment. Okay, I think it's good because they also support like just they also support their staff to take professional papers. Okay, I think many 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 I think fresh grad also. Okay, terima kasih. Alright, thanks a lot. Okay, inshallah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Right. Where is it? So accountants general department. So the functions to prepare quality public accounts. Okay. We'll cover this in the second part of this course. And then to provide quality accounting consultancy and advisory services. This one is basically providing accounting services to all government agencies. Because government agencies, they have different level of expertise and competencies of the accountants. Okay, I think if you look at the government, actually they really need a lot of accountants. Okay? Really not need a lot of accountants, professional accountants particularly, like yourself. I think it's good. I mean, if you join government, they will give you a special allowance on top of your other salary. They call it critical service salary. Okay, a critical service allowance. Okay, because of I think all professionals feel they receive that. To manage human resource on accounting public sector agencies. So to manage, in other words, all accountants recruited by the AG before they've been channeled or assigned to other agencies in the government. Okay, both at the local, the federal, and the state. But for statutory bodies, they can hire statutory bodies as well as GLC. They can hire directly. Okay, they are accountants, but they can also get secondment from AG. Right? I think what AG is controlling is generally is the number of accountants that they can take in. But of course, working together with the Public Service Commission, the position, but the hiring part is done by them. But for the government as a whole, the ministries, government agencies, departments particularly, they get their accountants from AG. To regulate and enforce accounting and management related matters under relevant regulations. Okay, so MPSAS basically under them, all accounting procedures for how to account, the chart of accounts, the bill. Okay, sometimes all these directions, directive are coming from Accounts General Department. Okay, so this same office, I think they have federal, this one is the HQ headquarters, but they also have state level office because they also become payment center, okay, for government. If you talk about documents, if you talk about payments by the government, so AG basically is the issuing the payments. So of course nowadays we talk about online payments, but they are the one processing the payments, okay, to all the bodies, except there are government agencies, statutory bodies, they can make payments directly, but others they go through accountants general department. Okay, and that's the general understanding. But the latest updates, apparently they tend to make this payment also at the department's level, so that remains to be seen. Okay, this one guy, controlling officers, very important person. Okay, I think I'm running out of time, but one or two slides. Controlling officers, okay. Look at this. A chief minister of Ministry of Finance may appoint controlling officer in respect of each purpose of expenditure. The controlling officer is the chief accounting officer for each purpose of expenditure. Of course, these are based on the Financial Practices Act. The duties to control the authorized estimates for a particular purpose, to control and manage all public money collected, received, disbursed, and then to secure proper exercise or performance of its duties. So if you talk about public sector money, okay, to be handled, to be managed effectively, efficiently, these are the person who is accountable. Okay, the person, the civil servant who's holding controlling officer position. Okay, so this is a technical name for this guy. Either he's a chief secretary, okay, either it's the head of the statutory bodies. Okay, if they hold this controlling officer position status, they are the one. It's like a board of directors of a company or CEO of the company. Okay, chairman. They are all basically working together. At the end, they are accountable to shareholders. These are the controlling government agencies, officers. Accounting officers, I can see that. So basically, the accounting process and accounting operation by accounting officers in handling public funds, demonstrate probity in handling asset and resources entrusted to them, care in safeguarding property, asset, and confidential information, proper observance of organizational rules and procedures to avoid waste and extravagance, personal honesty in claiming expenses, and ensuring that official asset and resources are of private advantage. This is based on IFAC. Okay, accountants, particularly accountants in the government. All right, I think time is limited. I want to cover accountability, but I think I keep this in there for the next class. Any question? No question. Okay, who's your good friend from this class today? Who's your good friend from the discussion just now? Nobody. Who's your good friend? No one. Are you there still?
Yes, we are
Yes,
here.
Okay, so who's your good friend? Controlling officers, Controlling officers. So to account for them, Okay, so the budget will be assigned to them and they have to manage the budget. So they will be, later on we'll discuss, they'll be accountable to the parliament, okay? Right, I think pretty much, I think when we discuss accountability, then I think you get a better idea. Right, if no question, then I will end this. Please, any group who, I need 3 groups, one group to withdraw from, to change the topic to other topic, beside budgeting, performance measurement, and public sector governance. One for budgeting, one for performance measurement, and public sector governance. And please share that in the WhatsApp group. Okay, or you can update in the shared document that is managed by Sister Nuru. Okay, so if no questions, I end this with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.